Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to the latest edition of Tider Insider TV. As mentioned, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. And we appreciate the good folks over there at TTS. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. And Rodney, the SEC meetings began today down at beautiful Destin Resort in Florida, and in-person meetings for the first time in 2 years. COVID had made them virtual the last 2 years, but all SEC personnel, including all 14 football coaches and ADs at the beach today, talking about the upcoming season and obviously the issues with NIL and the transfer portal. And Alabama head coach Nick Saban, well, obviously he always takes center stage, and he did meet with reporters today, and he obviously was asked about the little recent back and forth with Jimbo Fisher, the Texas A&M coach. Coach Saban said that A&M bought its entire recruiting class, signing class this past year. Of course, Fisher used to be the offensive coordinator for Saban at LSU. Here, Coach Saban today kind of clarifying those comments.
I didn't really say that anybody did anything wrong.
Well, you said they bought their recruiting class.
I didn't say anybody did anything wrong, okay? And I've said everything I'm going to say about this. But, you know, I think that, you know, I guess the point, and I should have never mentioned any individual institutions. I said that before. But, you know, some kind of uniform name, image, and likeness, you know, standard that supports some kind of equitable national competition, I think is really, really important in college athletics, in college football. And we've always had that, you know, whether it's equal scholarships, equal Alston money, you know, whatever it might be. And so that's kind of point one.
All right, here we go, Rodney. And all right, here's the deal. And here's some file video from Coach Saban in Birmingham a couple of months ago with the coaches when they met over there. Coach Saban never makes it personal, Rod. He didn't make it personal this time. Jimbo Fisher did, very much so. Jimbo Fisher coming back at Coach Saban with some really pointed remarks. Coach Saban saying, hey, listen, I've moved past it. I said what I had to say. He said he had no problem with Jimbo Fisher today. We did not hear from Coach Fisher. Hopefully tomorrow, Rodney, we will hear from the Texas A&M coach who has already called his former boss, Nick Saban, despicable and a narcissist. All right, so let me bring you in, Rodney, to kind of discuss this. Some pictures got out of the meeting room. Coach Saban and Coach Fisher not seated next to each other, but we know that things were talked about in that room, obviously, behind closed doors. Just your feeling on what do you think might have been said in regards to that particular issue between the two men?
Well, look, I think probably the consensus in that room among the coaches is exactly what Nick Saban said. We've been saying it for months here. There has to be uniformity across the country in how this NIL is handled. I mean, when you have some programs handling it one way, you have other programs handling it another way, there needs to be some clarity. There needs to be some rules. There needs to be some guidelines. I mean, are we just going to buy players, which is what Texas A&M did? Nick Saban was not wrong in terms of what he said. They did that. Nobody even really knows if it's wrong. The NCAA says it is, but is the NCAA in charge anymore? We don't know. So you don't really have any rules, any guidelines, any uniformity with this NIL. So I think that's probably the consensus among the coaches. Gary, just kind of reading between the lines, you know what Lane Kiffin said. Mm-hmm. I mean, Kirby Smart has said the same thing, that he didn't think NIL should be about using the money to lure players from high school to your school. So they've got to kind of come together, and obviously it's not going to get settled here. But somehow, some way, the SEC's got to figure out how they're going to handle it moving forward. Yeah,
as far as Jimbo Fisher is concerned, we hope to hear from him tomorrow at the SEC spring meetings. And, of course, again, we're not in that room, but I've covered Nick Saban for 15 years. You have as well. I think when he says it's never personal for him, he means it. I imagine he probably told Jimbo Fisher about what he said at the podium. Hey, listen, I wish I hadn't named any individual schools. It's nothing personal, and I hope we can go on and have a relationship. Now, whether or not Jimbo Fisher, on the other hand, wants to work that way, maybe we'll find out more tomorrow. But again, I think the stark contrast between the two men is Coach Saban said what he said. He said he wished he worded it differently, but he wasn't nasty about it in regards to continuing. You know, Fisher came back, and you and I have talked about here, thin-skinned to say the least, and almost like this had been building up over years and years and years. So I think the issue is with Jimbo Fisher, not with Nick Saban. I think Nick Saban said what he had to say. He's moved on. Question is, will Jimbo Fisher?
Well, to me, when I looked the way Jimbo Fisher responded and he denied that they bought players, it really came across to me that he was very defensive in terms of feeling guilty, because this is what they did. But so, again, the bottom line is you got to move forward, and you've got to figure out a way how this is going to be dealt with in a uniform way where everyone's on the same page and everyone's playing on the same field.
And as you mentioned, Lane Kiffin, he loves to kind of fuel the fire on social media. I don't know what he may come out with on Twitter, although Commissioner Sankey might have said, hey, stay off Twitter, Lane. But as we said, this is about more than Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban, and it's also, other coaches, basketball and other sports. But from a football standpoint, obviously NIL is going to be discussed. The portal is going to be discussed. Scheduling for the SEC going forward. Will they go to 9 conference games? I think at some point they will. And, Rodney, there's even some talk that the SEC might try to form its own playoff if it isn't happy with where the direction of college football goes.
Well, that would be interesting. I don't know that I would think that would happen, Gary. But going to be really interesting to see what direction they take. And also, you talked about the model there. Are we going to have divisions? Are we going to have pods? Are we going to be, one permanent opponent? We're going to have 3 permanent opponents, the rotational opponent. I think all of those things are going to be interesting when they eventually get them worked out because, of course, with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, this is going to be really a big change.
And I'm curious to see, will Texas and OU get into the conference before 2025? Right now it's looking like the Big 12 may hold their feet to the fire there. They may not get into the SEC until 2025. All right, here's what we know regarding dates and times for Alabama non-conference games this coming season. They kick off week 1 against Utah State at Bryant-Denny at 6 p.m. The following week in Austin against Texas will be for Fox's big noon kickoff game, which that means it'll be 12 Eastern, 11 a.m. Central. September 17th, home for Louisiana Monroe will be at 3 p.m., and the game against Austin Peay will be played at 11 a.m. November 19th. Not thinking that a lot of people will be looking forward to that one the week before the Iron Bowl. But there it is. Of course, Rodney, the game that's the most high profile there obviously is Texas. Texas fans not happy about the 11 a.m. kick. I don't blame them. I think for Alabama, I've always thought for the road team, these early kicks are positive.
Man, you think about how much money's being left on the table. Prime time, Gary, Alabama, Texas, that early in the season. What a draw that would be. But, hey, listen, 11 a.m., that's what the Big 12 does.
You know what Nick Saban's thinking, though? We can go out there, win the game by 2:15, 2:30, be back here by 4:35, be on some film by Saturday night. So it could turn out to be a positive. Well, still to come on TITV, Alabama Gymnastics has introduced a former Alabama gymnast to be the head coach of the Crimson Tide. And also coming up, we'll discuss Alabama baseball. Did not make it to an NCAA regional. Some fans have said that maybe it's time for a change at the head coaching position. Don't think that's going to happen. We'll discuss it. And later on, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882 if you want to give us a call. You can email us at the address on your screen, or you can tweet at us. Use that hashtag TITV so we can find it. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV will return right after this. And we're back on TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, at the beginning of the week, Alabama baseball head coach Brad Bohannon thought his team, beginning of last week, would need 2 or 3 wins to earn a regional invitation. Well, Alabama got off to a great start. They managed to get those 2 wins quick. Beat Georgia in the single elimination game, then beat Arkansas. But they could not get another one. And really, to be honest with you, Rodney, what happened was that even though Alabama finished 4-2 against top 25 opponents, when you got into the weekend, there were some negative outcomes for Alabama as far as getting a bid in that NCAA regional. Well, what happened in some other conference tournaments? So they were on the outside looking in, and Alabama fails to make a regional for back-to-back seasons. They're now 1-for-5 in Coach Brad Bohannon's 5 seasons. But although 2 years ago obviously doesn't count because the season got wiped out before they played a conference game due to COVID. But nonetheless, Rodney, I have to tell you, I liked what I saw from this Alabama team in the SEC tournament. They were aggressive. There you see tagging up, Pickney does on a foul pop and scoring a run. They went after it. They showed energy. They showed enthusiasm. They got the crowd behind them. I think that, first of all, so people that have been blowing up my phone, Coach Bohannon is coming back. He's going to be the coach next year. I think this team next year has a chance to be really good. And I thought they did this year. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm disappointed they didn't make it to a regional. I said on this show that I thought that was the minimum expectation for this season. But based on how they finished, I still think there's a chance for this program to get where Coach Bohannon wants to take it. Obviously, next year will be big.
Yeah, well, you and I have taken some hits here because, people say we're a little bit soft on this stance. But I tell you, Gary, Coach Bohannon's coming back, as you said. I think this team does have a chance to be much better next year. Now, look, they lost a lot of one-run games this year. There was a spurt there where they looked like they were turning the corner when they beat Tennessee, and then they kind of fell apart. You mentioned they came back, played really strong here in the SEC tournament, didn't get in. Some teams got in that maybe some people think Alabama should have gotten in ahead of, but that's the way it goes. Next year, though, is a really, really important year. They need to be good.
Yeah, I think, for one, right here in this league, I think Alabama should have got in over Ole Miss, which didn't even make it to Hoover for the SEC tournament, and Alabama swept the Rebels in Oxford. But all you can do is turn the page. Again, beating Georgia, beating Arkansas, losing to A&M in Florida. But all four of those games, they played hard, they played with excitement, and they've got a good roster coming back for next year. Now, obviously, the portal is going to affect that. Outfielder Owen Diodati and infielder Davis Heller reportedly going into the portal today, and there'll be more that do so, and there'll be the draft. And Alabama can also look to tap the portal as well. All right, Rodney, let's move on to our Coach Talk segment. And today in Coach Talk, we are going to get to Ashley Johnston. She is back, the former Alabama All-America gymnast, then known as Ashley Priest before she got married, led Alabama to a couple of national championships during her competing career at the Capstone. In fact, Alabama hasn't won a national championship since she competed. Now she's coming back as the head coach, replacing Dana Duckworth, who resigned. And Ashley Priest Johnston comes to Alabama, interestingly enough, from Auburn, where she was the associate head coach, assisted the last 4 years, associate head coach most recently. Here she is on Friday talking about getting back to Tuscaloosa.
I understand the roller coaster that comes from the greatest celebrations to the toughest losses. Those experiences have allowed me to develop a holistic vision for this program, and my number one priority is to value student-athlete well-being above all else. Alabama Gymnastics is a family, and it's a program where young women can find joy in their gymnastics and learn the art of teamwork, pulling together to accomplish a common goal. And at Alabama, that goal is to compete for championships.
Love what she said there, Rodney. As I said, she was part of 2 SEC and 2 national championship squads. Now, Dana Duckworth was a highly successful gymnast at Alabama, and she did a good job here. That's the good news for Ashley Johnston, Rodney. It's not like this program isn't good. This is a really good program, and she takes it over in a good situation and is looking to make it better.
She is. I mean, she knows what the program is, Gary. She's got a feel for the tradition. She knows what it takes to be successful. I think she did an outstanding job there at Auburn in her time there in an assistant role. But, really looking forward to what she does, inject some enthusiasm into the program, and hopefully, again, they continue to move back towards the top.
And interestingly enough, even though she competed at Alabama, this is the second time that Greg Byrne has gone to Auburn to poach an assistant coach to be a head coach at Alabama. The first was Brad Bohannon, and now Ashley Johnston. How do you think Bama fans feel about that?
Hey, listen, first of all, she's got Alabama roots. I mean, she's got the ties. And, again, I don't think it really matters. I think what they're looking for is success.
Yeah, want to win, that's for sure. All right, still to come on TITV, Alabama track and field looks to be gaining momentum at the right time. We'll recap the Tag's success at the NCAA East preliminaries. They get ready for the NCAA Outdoor Championships. And we'll get to your phone calls, emails, and text. Again, the phone number, 205-348-9882. Phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. So go ahead and give us a call or email us at TITV@WVOA23.com. We'll be right back with more TITV. Alabama men's and women's track and field teams will be represented at the NCAA Outdoor Championships coming up next month in June at famous Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon. The men's team finished the regular season and 4 more athletes are headed to the championship. The Tide will have 8 athletes representing the men's squad. The women's team will also be represented at the championships as they are sending 5 individuals to compete in 6 events along with a pair of relays. Overall, Alabama is sending 13 athletes to be represented in 14 individual events and 3 relays. The championships will go from June 8th to June 11th. And welcome back into TITV. Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Let's jump out on the phone lines. And we got the little Kenny in Havana. That's Alabama, not Cuba. Hey, little Kenny, what's up?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call, and I just want to get your opinion regarding the number of injuries that A&M had last year against Alabama. It seemed like when Alabama would get rolling or to whatever advantage a player would get injured for the A&M team, well, that would slow us down. Now, does that not indicate that they're going to go ahead and press the rules to the limit, just like they did with buying these players? Does it look to you like they're going to take over Auburn's place as a cheatingest bunch in the SEC?
All right, little Kenny, thanks for the phone call. I think this. I think that there are 14 institutions in the Southeastern Conference, soon to be 16. All 14 of these schools are wanting to win, regardless of the sport. Certainly football's at the top of the list. So I think everybody pushes the envelope trying to win. I think in last year's game, I don't want to take anything away from Texas A&M. They rose up. They were on a 2-game losing skid. Nobody gave them a chance. They rose up and they made plays, and they won that game. And Alabama didn't play its best, that's for sure. Made some mistakes, but I don't want to take anything away from A&M. If a few guys laid on the field, well, I see that every week in college football. So, yeah, I think A&M's pushing to win. I think they're paying Jimbo Fisher a lot of money to win. And, yes, I think they're committed to doing whatever it takes to win in this league, but that doesn't make them a lot different than everybody else.
They're not paying him $90 million to lose players to Alabama, okay? So you saw that coming when they initially brought Jimbo in, gave him that $75 million over 10 years. I knew right then, I said, listen, walking in the state of Texas and pulling all these 5-stars out, it's going to eventually slow down because, again, they're paying a lot of money. They want to keep those players there in Texas.
Yeah, thanks for the phone call. But you know what? Alabama gets a chance to pay them back October the 8th right here in Bryant-Denny Stadium. And it'll be a much-hyped game and advantage Alabama right now on paper. And we'll see how it looks closer to the game. All right, thanks for the phone call. Let's get to an email. This is our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Services, serving your family like our family. For all your heating and air conditioning needs, it's KDM Services. And this is from Joe in Bessemer. Are you surprised that Cade Phillips committed to UT? Seems odd since he comes from a prominent Tide sports family. Thank you, Joe. And, yeah, on the surface, it does seem odd. His dad is John David Phillips, former Alabama quarterback. His mother is Reagan Coral Phillips, former Alabama women's basketball player. His uncle is Brody Coral, former Alabama quarterback. And his grandfather is John Coral, former defensive end in 1973 National Championship under Coach Paul Bryant, who helped John Coral start the Big Oak Ranch. So, yes, on the surface, it does seem odd to me, Rod. This is a 6'9", 200-pound rising senior. He was All-State last year, led Jacksonville High School to a Class 4A state championship. He's projected to be maybe 6'11", even 7 feet tall. But under further review, doing a little research, I'm just going to be honest with you. I think Tennessee and Rick Barnes did a much better job of recruiting Cade Phillips than did Alabama. You read into that what you want. Maybe Alabama has other prospects that they've got rated higher of him. So after I read up on the situation, though, looked at the way Tennessee recruited him versus the way Alabama recruited him, I'm not surprised. It does look strange, but we see this more and more. Young men and young women have to make the decision that's best for them and not just because their family is associated with a particular school.
Right, and I think you're right, Gary. I think, look, whether you want to say Tennessee recruited him harder, wanted him more, whatever it was, I think that they did put more effort into it. Did he have a firm offer from Alabama? There's a lot of people who say he didn't. But whether he did or he didn't, he's obviously going to Tennessee. Was it a surprise? Not really, because we had kind of heard some things previous to that he could end up there. But when you look at a player of that magnitude who has those ties, generally you do expect they're going to end up at your school.
And listen, he has not signed yet, but it looks pretty solid to me. Knowing that family, they'll keep their word. All right, we'll be back with more phone calls and emails right after this. Welcome back to TITV, and let's get right back out on the phone lines. CB in Tuscaloosa. Hey, CB, what's up, man?
Hey, y'all, man. Look, we always seem to be have so many running backs. We've had some great ones, and usually have several, and I know that guy's coming from G-Tech, but how's the running backs going to stack up this year?
All right, CB, great call. I'll tell you this, Rodney, I wouldn't trade it. and I don't know what everybody else has got on their team, but I'm just telling you, these 5 with Jahmyr Gibbs, Rodell Williams, Jace McClellan, Jamarian Miller, and Trey Sanders, Miller the freshman, I wouldn't trade it for any other group in the country.
Tell you what, CB, you watch that September 10th Texas game, that may be the best collection of running backs in the country. Texas has some outstanding. Bijan Robinson, Rashawn Johnson, Keelan Robinson, the former Alabama player now over there. So they've got a really good core. But I'm with you, Gary. I mean, this is an outstanding running back room that Alabama has. Hopefully, Jace McClellan, and we think he is going to be 100% to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. And Trey Sanders had a really good spring. And Roydell's improving in terms of his injury recovery. And Jamarian Miller's a really outstanding true freshman. So they've got a great running back room here at Alabama.
All right, Reg, go fast. Reg, we got about 30 seconds. What's up, man?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. I wish it made Chelsea Barton, is that her name? The gymnastics coach. I'll come with my program next week.
All right, Reg. Thank you for the phone call. Always appreciate you watching. He also didn't have time to get to that question about Nick Saban's staff, but we'll try to do that next week. And we'll be back to wrap up this edition of TITV right after this. On Sunday, the final round of the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial Country Club in Dallas, former Alabama golfer Davis Riley caught fire at the turn. Check out his shot on the 9th. That led to an easy birdie. Then on the 10th hole, Riley sinks the long birdie putt. That shot gave him a share of the lead. Riley would take the lead outright 1 hole later, but then he gets into trouble. His tee shot on 14, gone. It would go out of bounds. He'd wind up making double bogey. That ends his chances to capture his first PGA title. He finished tied for 4th. He is close, though. He's going to win soon. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Tighter Insider TV. Don't forget, if you missed the program or you want to watch it again, 10:30 tonight we'll have the replay. Plus, you can find it anytime at WVOA23.com. Our program is brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you with some great video tonight. Deontay Wilder grew up dreaming of playing either football or basketball for Alabama. Instead, became the heavyweight champion of the world. And now he's got his own statue in Tuscaloosa. Man, it looks awesome. That was unveiled last week. He is a big Bama fan. That's TITV. Again, for Rodney, I'm Gary. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll be back again next week, Tuesday night at 6:30.